Hello, I'm Matthew, and you are watching the World Building Institute, and today we are going to be reviewing Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. Yay! Now, this review is going to be the DM stuff, magic items, and all that kind of thing. In the next few weeks, I'll make a video about the player options in there. I also want to apologise for the previous video not coming out. The graphics card in my old PC died, and I moved a load of stuff over to my new PC, but it seems the video file for that video is corrupt, so I won't be able to upload it. First things first, general thoughts. I really like Tasha's. There are a few minor problems, but I genuinely think it's a very good book. Tasha's notes are funny and strangely, weirdly horny. Like, Tasha is clearly into tentacles, just saying. It has a good variety of new content for players and DMs, and introduces some really interesting mechanics in DM tools. We're going to go over them and discuss what I like and don't like about them. Now, I have seen in some D&D communities online people saying that the book is mainly just trying to, direct quote, placate Twitter or appeal to SJWs. And I don't want to get too political, but that's a load of nonsense. I might talk a little about the orc controversy in the character options section, but the book in general is completely apolitical. Unless you include a single picture with a young gay wizard couple in it as political, in which case, are you okay? Like, acknowledging that gay people exist isn't a political statement, it's just life. Long story short, I don't think this is the case. It's just a normal D&D book. Anyway, without further ado, oh, actually, one more thing. Please like and share the video, and subscribe to the channel if you find it helpful. Okay, now, without further ado, let's begin with Part 1, Group Patrons. So the Group Patrons mechanic is great, and I think they cement a nice, balanced way to help DMs run factions that players are working with. They lay out a number of different patrons, perks for working with them, examples of what your players' roles might be within any given organisation, the types of quests an organisation might send them on, all that kind of stuff. I'm going to quickly lay out one of these here and give my thoughts on it. So we're going to go through the one that, for me, I think offers the most interesting possibilities. The Criminal Syndicate. So it gives a list of examples of what organisation it might be. There's an Assassin's Guild, a Thieves Guild, and pirate fleets, as well as examples of contacts for your players within the organisation, including a clever urchin or a former law enforcement official. Lays out the perks for joining. In this case, you can access merchants who will sell contraband and buy stolen goods, a safe house network, and discounts at syndicate front businesses. It then lays out what people's roles within the organisation may be based on background. For example, an urchin may be a burglar within the organisation, a soldier a hired muscle, a noble may be a con artist, and finally the quests that a guild might send you on. Things like a heist, fighting off a rival gang, assassinations, all that kind of thing. So that's the kind of bare bones of the system, which is fine, but what's exciting is how easy it is to build stuff onto it if you want to. If you want your party to get better perks as things go on with this organisation, you can do that. Like, it's really easy to build that system on. You want them to start and grow their own organisation from scratch, that can be done. The best thing about group patrons, though, is that you can easily use them to hold an evil party together. Evil campaigns tend to run into this problem where, because all of the characters are evil, they might fall to infighting, and it's hard to control them and keep them on track. If you work for an evil religious cult, for example, a party member planning to go full chaotic evil and betray and abandon the rest of the party is more likely to think twice if they're going to be murdered by a cult of lunatics as a consequence. It goes some way to solving the problem, then, of evil campaigns. Also, if you want them to do a certain thing, just have their guild contact come to them and say, "Ah, yes, hello friends. I need you, on orders of the Grand Vizier, to go to the Temple of the Sun God and steal their golden idol, that we may place it in the caves of Cauldron and lure them into a deadly trap." obviously do a better villain voice than mine, but beside that, you get the point. All in all, I really like the group patrons, I like what the idea represents, and I think a lot of campaigns could really benefit from a formalised faction allegiance system. I also think it's really easy to modify these free-run factions, which is going to be important in some settings, particularly, for example, if you're running a sci-fi type thing. Some of the factions are going to be different to the type that you'll find in a fantasy setting. All that positivity sorted, I do wish that the system had more to it as written in the book. They could have devised some extra optional systems for deepening allegiances and receiving promotions within organisations. It also doesn't provide any examples of rules for the different organisations, and while that's really easy to homebrew fix, it would have been nice to have some pre-written examples. Overall, I don't think this chapter suffers much for the problems that are there. I really like this section, and I think it could be really helpful to a lot of DMs who want to run that kind of campaign. With that done, we'll move on to the next section. Part 2. Spells and magic items. So spells first. We have some reprints from the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide, Booming Blade, Lightning Lure, Sword Burst and Green Flame Blade. These aren't changed at all from the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide, which is kind of a shame because they aren't very good for classes who gain access to extra attack, with the exception of the new Blade Singer, which we'll talk about in the part 2 of the Tasha's review. Then, there are a bunch of new spells which I'm going to divide into 3 main categories. Number 1, Psionics. Number 2, Planar. And number 3, Summoning. There are a couple that don't quite fit those categories, Tasha's Caustic Brew, Spirit Shroud, and Blade of Disaster, but they seem good fun, and I'm mainly talking about the theming and stuff here. So, let us begin with Psionics. The psionic spells are stuff like Mind Sliver, a cantrip where you stab people in the face with your mind, Mind Whip, where you whip people in the mind with your mind, and Intellect Fortress, which makes your mind unwhippable. These are all verbal components only, which works really well with the mind powers angle and really well with the new psionic subclasses thematically. Then we have the planar spells, Tasha's Otherworldly Guise, which half shapeshifts you into an angel or devil, and Dream of the Blue Veil, where you do a load of drugs, go on a trip, and get warped into another realm in the material plane. Dream of the Blue Veil seems more like a DM tool than a player option. If you want a campaign that occurs simultaneously in Eberron and Faerun, you can do that. I probably won't use it too much. I don't really do much planner stuff in my campaigns, which is something I might talk about at some point. I do think the planes kind of bloat the settings that they're used in, but that's more of a personal taste thing, and if you enjoy using them, then Dream of the Blue Veil may be the spell for you. And finally, we have the new summoning spells. There are a lot of them here. Are you ready? We have Summon Aberration, which summons a tentacle monster, a frog, or a giant eyeball. Summon Beast, which summons either a dog, a fish, or a bird. Summon Celestial, which summons either an angel with a bow or an angel with a mace. Summon Construct, which lets you make a construct out of either clay, metal, or stone. Summon Elemental, which lets you summon a fire, water, earth, or air spirit. Summon Fae, which always summons the same little Fae, but they might be angry, tricksy, or mirthful, which I think means happy, but who knows. Summon Fiend, which summons either a devil, a demon, or a Yugoloth. Summon Shadow Spawn, you summon a spirit from the Shadowfell, which is either very angry, very sad, or very scared. And finally, and my favourite, Summon Undead, which lets you summon a rotting corpse, a skeleton, or a ghost. We are done. That's all of them. There's a lot of these new summoning spells, but I think they're really nice. They're really cool for summoners who don't want to clog the move order. Rather than upcasting summoning more, upcasting scales up the creatures. They get more powerful as you do, which I think is really nice. All in all, the summoning spells and the psionics are really good fun, and the planar travelling could be really cool for some campaigns. The spells, in general, I think as well, also support the thematics of the classes provided, and the general themes of the book too. Tasha seems to be really interested in planar travel, so you see she has a lot of planar spells. Tasha seems to be interested in psionics, and the book is interested in psionics, so we get these new psionic spell options. I think it's really good kind of writing design. I don't know if that's the right term. It all feels kind of married together really nicely in a way that Xanathar's doesn't necessarily. Not that I'm saying it's a better book than Xanathar's. I don't necessarily know if I'd go that far, but it is pretty cool. Anyway, we're going to talk about the magic items next. Again, they all seem to fall into nice, clear little categories, which I really like. First up, magical tattoos. These are tattoos that you get inked into your skin and they give you special abilities. Unlike the UA, they take up a full attunement slot each, but I really like them, and I really like the idea of using magic ink to tattoo yourself and give you magic powers. Then you have a variety of special spellcasting focuses for all of the magical classes. These are really neat. I particularly like the Sorcerer Shards. These are little chunks of a different plane that you can use. They kick in when you use meta magic, and they trigger different special effects. So the Astral Shard, for example, lets you teleport up to 30 feet whenever you use a meta magic. They're tied to the core mechanics of a class in a way that I find really satisfying, and in a way that the others aren't necessarily. That's not to say that they're bad, I just think the Sorcerer Shards are better game design than the others. And finally, there are 6 artifacts in Tasha's. There's Baba Yaga's Mortar and Pestle, which is a magic form of transport, a quarterstaff, and a bunch of toolkits all in one. You can travel to any location within 1,000 miles in either 1 hour by day or 1 minute by night. Next, you have the Crook of Rao, which can cast certain spells using charges, Absolute Banishment, which lets you banish all fiends under CR19 to their home plane, and they can't return for 100 years. Now, the Crook of Rao does have a drawback when you use Absolute Banishment, which may cause it to summon a whole bunch of fiends, but it is still pretty cool. Then we have the Demonomicon, which is a book. It allows you to cast certain spells. You can use it to trap demons in if you know the Magic Circle spell, and when you roll spell damage against a demon, you deal the maximum possible damage against it, which is really cool. Then we have Luba's Taroka of Souls. This is a Taroka deck. If you're not familiar with those, I'm pretty sure they've been in D&D for a while, but the first one I came across was in Curse of Strahd. They're associated with the Vistani people, who are based on the Romani. Luba's Taroka of Souls has a whole bunch of undead trapped in it. It gives you access to some spells. You don't make concentration checks on divination spells, which is really cool. You can use it to impose disadvantage or advantage for an hour. Using that ability can then summon one of the undead within the deck, who set about murdering people within 10d10 miles. But if you don't use it for 7 days, it's unattuned to you. Also, if you get rid of all of the spirits in the deck by killing them, it unlocks another spirit, the spirit of an ancient lich, who can then also be summoned by the card's effect. Seriously, Luba's Taroka of Souls is a really cool idea, but I feel like it's probably more harm than good. What is it with magic decks of cards in D&D and them being secretly really terrible? Who knows? Then we have the Servant of Lyoko, basically a 2-person mech. It's kind of a Zord, it is a giant construct that people get inside and pilot and walk around, and it can punch real good and jump real far, and it seems really cool. I'm currently working on a setting that's kind of a bit steampunky, kind of spacey, really cool. Seems like it would be a good fit for that. And finally, we have the Teeth of Dalvernar. God's sake, Dalvernar. Yeah, Dalvernar. Which gives you magic powers by implanting teeth in your mouth, or summons monsters by throwing teeth on the ground to fight your enemies for you. All in all, I really like the magic items in the book. Personally, I tend to homebrew most of the magic items in my campaigns, but I may actually use some of these. It is lacking in magic weapons, which is a pity. I don't really think there's enough variety in magic weapons in 5th edition currently, but the ones that are there are really, really cool. Next up, we have Part 3, DM's Tools. So the book gives some advice for running a session 0, but that's kind of boring. So we're going to start with sidekicks. These give you options for less skilled PC type characters. They're in 3 broad categories: experts, which are kind of roguey / bardy characters; spellcasters, which let you have a, lesser spellcaster in your party. They come in different flavours, so you can have a charisma based one who draws from the bard or warlock list, an int based one who draws from the artificer or wizard list, and a wisdom based one who draws from the cleric or druid list. And finally, warriors, who are like lesser fighters, although I really think their names need to be swapped around. The fighters are more like warriors and the little guys are more like fighters, in my mind anyway. These are all really nice. They let you build characters who can assist parties without overshadowing anyone or being too helpful. The book also recommends you consider letting people who want to play less complex characters use a sidekick, and I actually think this is really good. Particularly if you've got newer players in your group, letting them play a sidekick for the first couple of sessions before they build a new character could really help them understand the mechanics of the game a bit better before you throw them into the maelstrom of options that is 5th edition character creation. Next up, we have parlaying with monsters, which are rules for not just murdering anything you come across, and suggested skills for researching each of them before you approach them and try to make peace. It's a nice concept. I do think it could be more well fleshed out, but it's a nice idea. Because it's not very fleshed out, I don't have much to say about it here. I guess it would probably be my biggest criticism of the book. This section isn't well fleshed out enough for my tastes. Some more formal rules would have been really nice. Finally, we have environmental hazards. In my opinion, the best damn part of the book. It lays out D100 tables for various effects in lots of different magical environments. You've got blessed places, you've got places touched by the far realm, haunted places, places full of giant insects, places with cursed mirrors, places with psychic animals, and places of unravelling magic where the weave has gone wild. But the fun don't stop there, guys! It also lays out rules for magical storms, flare winds, which are magic sand and rock storms, flame storms, which burn stuff, clues in the name, necrotic tempests that raise the dead, and mega blizzards called Thrum's Howl, which stop you regaining health until you warm back up. There are also emotional echoes. These are areas that target people with a DC 16 suggestion spell and force them to perform acts associated with the emotion that lingers in the area. We also have magic springs, magic mushrooms, not the drugs, and primal trees, which bestow various effects on you for drinking from / eating from them. There are mimic colonies, which are entire settlements constructed from mimics, which can potentially peacefully coexist with humans. Unearthly roads, which lay out the way magic portals not produced by spells may work. All in all, this is really cool. I love the way these systems work. They introduce a wonderful way to handle weather, natural hazards, and other such things in your campaigns. Now, there are a couple of things I've not really mentioned here in the video. The final chapter of the book is about puzzles, for example. That's just because I found those sections difficult to write about in a way that I thought would be informative without giving too much away about them. I think that they're okay, they're pretty good. Some of the puzzles are a bit predictable. Some of them seem like they could work really well in certain campaigns. There is one which is based really firmly around cryptography and stuff, which I really enjoy. I quite like the whole writing out a language thing to hand out to your players. That's neat. So, those are my opinions of Tasha's. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please like, share and subscribe, and I'll be back to my normal stuff next week, with the Tasha's character options section the week after that. I'll probably take a couple of weeks off over Christmas, but I hope to see you in the next video. I've been Matthew, you've been watching the World Building Institute, and I hope to see you again soon. Goodbye.